And so if we are willing to accept that Trajan had greater ambitions for conquest and greater ambitions for himself and his state, it would be natural for him to look to Dacia.
In the year 101 AD, the Dacians know their years of peace are about to end. Many of them pack up and flee for their lives. Though the Dacians have done battle with the Romans before, this time is very different, according to historian Cassius Dio.
Decebalus, learning of Trajan's advance, became frightened, since he well knew that before it was not the Romans that he had conquered, but Domitian. And now he would be fighting against both the Romans and Trajan the Emperor.
Dacian families head for safer ground, knowing this time there will be no negotiations.
Trajan, throughout his reign, is renowned for traveling with his armies and enduring some of the same difficulties that his army endures. And I think this is what endears Trajan very much to the soldiers serving under his command eventually. He appreciated the struggles that they were going through and was willing to share some of these struggles himself.
And now that struggle will take the Roman troops to Dacia. The new Roman Emperor Trajan has reconciled the Senate and the military, and now he seeks Roman glory and personal honor by confronting the troublesome Dacians at Tepai. By 101 AD, the Dacian king Decebalus has grown familiar with Roman fighting tactics and with making friends with Rome's enemies.
Decebalus worked assiduously in building up a nexus of alliances, not just amongst foreign peoples, but also amongst his nobles. And he'll create a fighting force that's formidable, but it's not as formidable as the Romans. However, they are organized, and they are a formidable enough force that they can beat the Romans at times, and that's important to remember.
But it is not enough, and Decebalus knows it. Faltering, he even sends Trajan a plea for peace. Trajan rejects it. The emperor will stop at nothing short of victory, though it comes at a high price, writes historian Cassius Dio.
Trajan engaged the foe and saw many wounded on his own side and killed many of the enemy. And when bandages gave out, he is said not to have spared even his own clothing, but to have cut it up into strips.
A Dacian warrior will choose death over capture, and they treat their own prisoners with abject cruelty. Roman captives are handed over to Dacian women to be humiliated, tortured, and eventually killed. Ultimately, Trajan prevails over Decebalus, bending the barbarian to Rome's will. The vanquished king will surrender all that he has gained from the previous treaties and swear his allegiance. Cassius Dio recounts the terms.
So Decebalus reluctantly engaged to surrender his arms, to give back the deserters, to demolish the forts, to withdraw from captured territory, and furthermore, to consider the same persons enemies and friends as the Romans did.
With the terms of the treaty agreed upon, Trajan has converted a fierce adversary into an ally and can return to Italy a proud man. But the treaty falls short of its mark. It can't curtail Decebalus's bloodthirsty ambition, and it can't force him to surrender his knowledge of Roman technology. The Dacians are not to be trusted. Denied Roman weaponry, they begin to construct their own, breaking their word by building their armories. With sharpened blades and bolstered ranks, they expand their territory in defiance of Rome.
It's very unclear why Decebalus should break the treaty. Probably the answer was that it was a question of inevitability. Decebalus no doubt saw that a war with Rome, another showdown, was inevitable. The region was not big enough for the two of them, if you like, and therefore he thought he would get his attack in first. He took in deserters, he made various menacing moves, and perhaps he hoped he could seize the initiative, take over more of the region, and therefore forestall the attack by Trajan, which he no doubt thought was inevitable.
While Decebalus is rebuilding his war machine in Dacia, Trajan travels from Italy to sabotage it. Where Decebalus relies on force, Trajan employs diplomacy. He courts the Quadi, Marcomanni, and other barbarians sympathetic to the Dacians, but swayed by Roman wealth. By winning them over to Rome's side, Trajan deprives Decebalus of fighting power. If Decebalus means to wage this war, he'll have to fight it alone.
Trajan responded to Decebalus' very skillful way to wage war against the Romans with an equally skillful way to engage basically every little group in the area or surrounding the Dacian kingdom.
So there's a lot of desperation on the part of Decebalus at this juncture, and his allies are growing restive. They want to leave him, and they're making overtures to the Romans. So what's going on at this point is Decebalus certainly knows he's in a grave, grave situation.
106 AD. Not settling for half measures, Trajan leads his expansive forces to the political center of the Dacian kingdom, Sarmisagathusa in present-day Romania. Within the walls of the fortress city, soldiers and citizens prepare for the invasion by Roman troops. The Dacians put their faith in their stout walls and strong army. But should the Romans breach the gates, the citizens will be ready. Armed with torches and oil, they will leave the Romans with nothing worth taking. And for themselves, a poison is prepared, so that no Dacian man, woman, or child will suffer capture and Roman slavery. If they are defeated, they will all be joined in death. To reach the Dacian capital, Trajan runs the gauntlet of Dacian forces defending the route that leads to the gates of the city.
This is a big fortified place that was extremely difficult to take, and the Romans had to just proceed very slowly, taking each place one after the other, and as you can imagine, taking a lot of losses as they did so. It was a bitter struggle.
An impenetrable gate will confront Trajan's iron will. 106 AD. For more than 2 decades, the hostile Dacians have tormented Rome. Now, as they once again break their treaty, Emperor Trajan mobilizes his troops to break their will by breaching their stronghold. The Dacians have fought mightily to keep the Romans from the gates of their citadel at Sarmisagathusa.
Although the Dacian equipment was not as good, they were fighting for their homeland, they were occupying extremely strong positions, and as I said about the capital, this is a big fortified place. It was a bitter struggle.
The Roman efforts pay off as their forces penetrate the doomed city. But the Dacians who choose death over defeat have poisoned themselves and set the city ablaze. Decebalus, cornered by Roman soldiers, will not be taken alive. But his aide, Bacillus, pleads for his own life and is captured. A better prize is Decebalus's head, which Trajan soldiers collect as the ultimate trophy. They will later parade it victoriously through the streets of Rome.
It was the first big military success by a reigning emperor since the days of Augustus and Julius Caesar. This was a remarkable achievement.
The victory reaps material benefits as well. Bacillus leads Roman soldiers to his king's treasure.
The amount of gold that Trajan received or took in his conquest of Dacia was enormous by any stretch, and it had actually been hidden by the Dacians under the river Sargetius.